To all of you. Today we will have another talk from Professor A. Nityananda Shetty, Department of Chemistry, NITK Surathkal. As far as educational background is concerned, he is an undergraduate from St. Aloysius College. Previously it was under Mysore University, and MSc from Mangalore University in 1984 with a second rank, and PhD from Mangalore University in 1992 under the guidance of what's that?
Professor R.V. Gadag.
Oh, Professor R.V. Gadag. And as far as professional experience, from 1984 to 85, Mangalore University as a faculty member, and from 1984 to 87, it was KREC, that is regional Karnataka Regional College for Engineering. Before it was, now it is NITK. From 1987 to 98 as a lecturer in NITK. 1998 to 2006 assistant professor, and from 2006 onwards from till date he is a professor. As for administrative experience, he was the head of the department from 2004 to 2008, and associate dean for faculty welfare in 2008 to 2011, chairman Institute of Grievances and Redressal Committee 2013 till date. He has guided 10 PhDs and 6 PhDs are ongoing. He has published more than 100 papers in national and international journals, and presented conference in more than 70 conferences, and 3 books to his credit. He is a member of ISTE, Indian Science Congress, Indian Council of Chemists, American Chemical Society, and he is a member of BOS in various universities like Mangalore University Material Science, St. Aloysius College for PG Studies in Chemistry, St. Agnes College for PG Studies in Chemistry, SDM Ujre PG Studies in Chemistry, Bashveshwara Engineering College, Bagalkote Chemistry, member of research and assessment committees in other universities like Manipal University, Nitte University, Christ University Bangalore, NIT Tiruchirappalli, and VTU Bangalore, Belgaum. Okay. With these backgrounds, I welcome Professor A. Nityananda Shetty to take up the dais for next 1 hour. Welcome, sir.
First of all, let me thank Dr. Vishalakshi and also her colleagues for having given me this opportunity to be with you for the next 1 hour. Quite often people ask, don't you get bored teaching the same thing again and again? But my answer is, it is true that we teach the same thing again and again, but not to the same students. Every time we get the new students and we teach it to the new students. Therefore, there is something refreshing. It is not just a routine, boring thing. Therefore, I am very happy that I am given an opportunity to interact with the new set of students. Of course, I teach day after day in my institute for the same set of students for 1 year, 2 years, but this is a slight change. I am having an opportunity to interact with the new set of students from the Mangalore University PG department and also from some of the affiliated colleges. For the next 1 hour, I will be touching upon few topics related with corrosion inhibitors. Okay, when we look around, we see a lot of corroded steel articles around us. Maybe the corroded window rods or huge lumps of corroded steel reinforcements at a site of building construction. And corrosion is synonymous with rusting of iron, because it is steel which is the most widely used metal or alloy. In the evolution of civilization, there were different ages identified: Stone Age, Copper Age, Iron Age, Steel Age, and so on. Probably a few years back we are considered to be in the Polymer Age, and at present we are stepping into the so-called Nano Age. Therefore, metals, alloys were part and parcel of the human civilization. Since iron or steel is used most widely compared to any other metals, and rusting of iron is corrosion of iron or steel, there is an impression that corrosion means it is rusting of steel, because compared to all other metals, the problem with the rusting of the steel is more severe because we are using it more. Not that other metals do not undergo corrosion, except the so-called noble metals like gold, platinum, palladium, to some extent silver. All other metals are susceptible for corrosion. If you look into the electrochemical series, what is it? What is electrochemical series? Metals or elements arranged in the order of their electrode potential. Most of the metals are with the negative electrode potential compared with hydrogen. That means these metals have more tendency to undergo oxidation, and corrosion is nothing but oxidation. Metal gets converted into its ion, metal gets converted into its compound. Therefore, all those metals, the so-called active metals or reactive metals or less inert metals, they are susceptible for corrosion. And corrosion is a thermodynamically spontaneous process, and therefore we cannot stop the corrosion of metals, we can only control it. And therefore corrosion is also referred to as the cancer of metals. Of course, now most of the types of cancers are curable, but corrosion is not completely, or it cannot be stopped, it can be only controlled. And as the definition goes, corrosion is, previous one, defined as the destruction or deterioration and consequent loss of metal through chemical or electrochemical attack by the environment. And in some of the books, if you refer, they use a word unwanted chemical or electrochemical attack. Then what is meant by wanted chemical attack? For example, in batteries, you use metal electrodes, and at the anode, metal undergoes oxidation, metal gets dissolved, metal gets converted into its ion, but that we don't consider as an unwanted thing, because we draw current or we draw energy from that process. But basically that is also a corrosion process. At the anode of the galvanic cell, metal changes into its ions, metal undergoes corrosion, and therefore sometimes corrosion means something which is not required, which is unwanted, which is bad, and therefore it is said as it's an unwanted destruction or deterioration. And therefore it is a transformation of a pure metal into its ion. And as all of you know, the metal, for the metals, the highest oxidation state is 0. It cannot, lowest oxidation state is 0. It cannot be reduced further. It can only be oxidized. Or the activity of the metals is through oxidation. And therefore, during corrosion, metal invariably undergoes oxidation and gets converted into its ions. Next, please. And why corrosion is important? As I said, we had a age of metals, ages of metals. copper age, bronze age, brass age, iron age, steel age. Therefore, we cannot think of living without metals in one form or the other form. One metal or the other metal is being used in our daily activities. And when the metal undergoes corrosion, it impairs the application of the metal, the use of the metals for which it is meant for. And when the corrosion loss is calculated, because you know that corrosion is only a surface phenomenon. When the metal is exposed to the environment, the surface layer of the metal atoms, they are attacked by the constituent of the environment. The surface atoms are converted into the metal compounds, and therefore it is supposed to be a very slow process. The metal getting corroded on the surface, one layer gets depleted, the next layer of the metal atoms are attacked by the corrosion environment, and that gets corroded, and therefore it has to proceed layer by layer. Therefore, in any corrosion case, if you just consider the loss of metal by corrosion, what percentage of the metal is lost? Probably that loss may be a very, very small percentage. But when you calculate the loss due to corrosion, it is not only the direct loss of the metal, all other costs associated with the use of metals. When the metal undergoes corrosion, the subsequent repair, subsequent replacement, and all other losses related with it. It may be an instrument where you have different metal components. If one component corrodes, and if you cannot use that equipment, then either you have to get that equipment repaired. Till the equipment is repaired, you cannot do your work in that equipment, you cannot use that equipment. For example, in a research lab, if the equipment goes out of order due to corrosion, then maybe for months together one cannot carry out his research work. Or in a factory, if a machinery involved in the production, if that machinery goes out of order due to corrosion, probably the plant may have to be shut down. It can be a huge metal structure. For example, I don't know, some of my friends here may remember, and you were not born at that time, I think in the late 80s, you would have heard of Mandavi Bridge near Panaji, across the Mandavi River, and that collapsed. I don't remember the exact year, I think in late 80s, and a few vehicles fell into the river, and then of course for years together the bridge was not used. Alternative arrangements had to be made. The bridge had to be repaired, and the bridge was constructed, I think, around 1968. And at that time, the cost of the bridge was probably in the lakhs, not in crores. But once the bridge collapsed, a committee was formed to assess to the repair of the bridge or reconstruction of the bridge. The cost incurred for the committee itself was more than the original cost of the bridge, leave alone the reconstruction. One of the main reasons for the collapse of the bridge was it was very near to the sea, and under the salt environment or sea environment, some of the reinforcement rods of the bridge were corroded, and once inside the concrete, when the iron rods corrode, the volume increases. Therefore, there will be creation of huge amount of pressure inside, and the corrosion continues unabated, and the material or the reinforcements lose their strength, and that causes under the stress, because vehicles will be running on the bridge, under the stress or the pressure, the bridge collapsed. Then of course for the reconstruction, the amount spent was much higher, but unfortunately during the reconstruction stage itself, the bridge collapsed a second time. Probably not because of the corrosion of the metal, probably because of the erosion of the human values. Therefore, the indirect losses are much more than the direct losses. Another example I can quote is, you would have heard of a Pamban Bridge at Rameshwaram. That is on the sea, a very salty environment, corrosive environment. The maintenance of that bridge to prevent it from corrosion. It is said that the bridges started painted from one end, and by the time the painters reach the other end, once again the painting has to be started from the other end. This is a continuous process throughout the year because it's a very corrosive environment. Therefore, huge amount of money is spent on maintenance. Of course, when the human life is lost, what is the loss? Probably for the government agencies it is easy to estimate depending upon the status of the people who die. You would have read in the newspapers, if it is a normal vehicle accident, in thousands, train accident in the lakhs, if it is air crash, it is in crores. But for the nearest and dearest, the loss is, cannot be just assessed. And therefore, lot of costs are involved, and therefore it is important for one to have the knowledge about the corrosion, how it can be controlled. I don't use the word to prevent it, how it can be controlled. Next slide, please. Then comes the question, why of corrosion? Why do the metals undergo corrosion? And you are aware that most of the metals I had mentioned earlier, except the noble metals, all other metals, they exist in the earth in the form of their compounds or in the form of their ores. The metals are extracted by different processes: hydrometallurgy, thermometallurgy, electrometallurgy. You would have studied many of them. What do you do there? Energy is supplied to extract the metal from the metal compound. What does it mean? The metal compound is at a lower energy state, and for the extraction of the metal you supply energy, or the extraction of the metal is an endothermic process. Therefore, compared to the metal compounds, the pure metal is at a higher energy state. Any system at a higher energy state is unstable. It has got the natural tendency to get converted into the lower energy state. Since the pure metal is at higher energy state compared to its compounds or its ores, the pure metals have the natural tendency to get converted into its ore or to get converted into its compound. Therefore, the pure metals, when you expose to the environment, they have the natural tendency to react with the constituents of the environment and get converted into the compounds. Therefore, I said earlier that corrosion is a thermodynamically spontaneous process. Corrosion is an exothermic process. Corrosion is associated with negative free energy change. Hope all of you are aware that it is a free energy, negative free energy change that is the driving force for the spontaneity of any process. Except for a few noble metals, because even in their metallic state they are more stable. As I mentioned earlier, gold. Probably if gold also would have undergone corrosion just like steel, people would not have gone after gold. Within no time it would have tarnished and nobody would have had interest in wearing the gold articles. Next please. Okay, these are again some of the corrosion damages: poor appearance, maintenance and operating costs, plant shutdowns, contamination of the product, loss of valuable products due to leakage. If there is a leakage due to corrosion, if a pipeline, if that gets damaged, and if there is a leakage, effect on safety and reliability. A boiler tube, if it undergoes corrosion and it becomes weak, there is a possibility of even explosion. And product reliability, product may be mixed up with the corrosion products and that will affect the quality of the. Okay, then what is this corrosion? Generally, corrosion is classified into two types. I think some of you would have studied, you have corrosion in your syllabus, that's what I am told. You would have studied dry corrosion and wet corrosion. Most of the corrosion cases are here. Wet corrosion, therefore I have listed here only the electrochemical theory or the wet corrosion mechanism. And according to the electrochemical theory, corrosion takes place due to the formation of local galvanic cells on the metal. What is the galvanic cell? What is the galvanic cell? Which converts chemical energy into electrical energy. In a galvanic cell you have anode where the oxidation takes place. You have cathode where the reduction takes place. You cannot have anodic reaction without a cathodic reaction and vice versa. At the anode, oxidation takes place. Electrons are liberated and electrons are consumed at the cathode. Therefore, there is a flow of electrons from the anodic region to the cathodic region. And electrochemical corrosion, or in the presence of moisture or in the presence of a conducting medium, corrosion takes place due to the formation of localized galvanic cells on the same metal surface, or when two different metals are in contact with each other. When two metals are in contact with each other, it is quite obvious, because one metal has got more tendency to undergo oxidation with the lower electrode potentials. The other metal has got higher electrode potential or less tendency to undergo oxidation or more tendency to undergo reduction. The one with lower electrode potential, more active, more tendency to undergo oxidation, naturally acts as an anode. For example, if you combine iron with the copper, you know that iron is with lower electrode potential than copper. Iron will act as anode, copper will be acting as the cathode. Therefore, naturally, iron will undergo oxidation and that will result in corrosion of iron. But it is also possible on the same metal, there can be the formation of galvanic cells. There are number of reasons for that, or there are causes for the formation of galvanic cells. Briefly, I will mention it a little later. And therefore, basically, it's the formation of a galvanic cell. At the anode, metal undergoes oxidation, metal gets converted into metal ion, and at the cathode, the metal is unaffected. Metal doesn't get affected at the cathode, because at the cathode it is the reduction. Metal cannot be reduced further. Therefore, metal is unaffected at the cathode. Then there cannot be anodic reaction without cathodic reaction. Then what should be the cathodic reaction? Some of the constituents of the corrosion environment, they will participate in the cathodic reaction and they will undergo reduction. And the two most possible cathodic reactions are either liberation of hydrogen or consumption of oxygen, absorption of oxygen. When the oxygen is not present in the environment, then generally the liberation of hydrogen will be the most probable cathodic reaction. But when oxygen is present in the environment, mostly it will be the consumption of oxygen that is the cathodic reaction. Therefore, correspondingly, the corrosions are also known as hydrogen type corrosion and oxygen type corrosion. And if it is hydrogen evolution, then again depending upon the medium, whether if it is an acidic medium, it is H plus ions present in the medium will take up electrons and get liberated as hydrogen. And if the solution is neutral or alkaline, the water molecule will take up 2 electrons, liberating hydrogen and also forming hydroxyl ions. And if it is oxygen type reaction, then in the acidic medium, it is H plus ions are present in excess, plus oxygen, plus electrons, giving water. If it is neutral or alkaline, it is water plus oxygen plus electrons, forming hydroxyl ions. Next, please. If you take iron as an example, at the anode, iron gets converted into ferrous ions. At the cathode, OH minus ions are formed due to the cathodic reaction. Then these ions, ferrous ions from the anode and OH minus ions from the cathode, they will migrate towards each other, diffuse towards each other. And somewhere in between the cathode and anodic region, they combine together to form ferrous hydroxide. And it doesn't remain as ferrous hydroxide. In the presence of sufficient oxygen, this ferrous hydroxide will be further oxidized into hydrated ferric oxide. That is what we generally see as yellow rust. Yellow layer on the steel surface, yellow rust, that is hydrated ferric oxide. But if sufficient oxygen is not present, then ferrous hydroxide will be converted into magnetic oxide of iron, ferroso-ferric oxide. It cannot be completely oxidized to ferric state because sufficient oxygen is not present. Partially converted into ferric, partially remains as ferrous. Therefore, you will be getting ferroso-ferric oxide or magnetic oxide of iron, which is known as black rust. Have you seen the black rust? If not, go to your hostel, scratch the paint layer on the window rods, and below that paint layer, you will see the black powder. That is nothing but black rust, because below the paint layer there is no sufficient oxygen for iron to get oxidized to ferric oxide. Therefore, it is partially oxidized, and therefore you have only black oxide or the magnetic oxide of iron. Next, please. Okay, causes for corrosion: cell formation on the metal surface, metallic impurities. As I mentioned earlier, if two different metals are in contact with each other, it can form a galvanic cell. Breakdown of the protective films. Tin sheets. What are tin sheets? Steel sheets coated with the tin. As long as the tin coating is complete, uniform, non-porous and complete, the underlying steel plate is protected completely. But at some places, if that tin coating is ruptured, if the iron gets exposed, then you have the problem, because tin is cathodic to iron. Tin has got higher electrode potential. Therefore, the entire sheet of tin surface acts as the cathode. Only a small area which is exposed where the tin coating is broken, that region acts as anode. Then you have a situation where very small anode and very large cathode, ratio of anodic area to cathodic area becomes very small, and that results in accelerated corrosion. Wherever the steel is exposed, the corrosion takes place very fast, because whatever the electrons liberated at the anode, they are very fast consumed by the cathode, because you have a very large cathode. Then within no time, you may just see a hole in the tin sheet wherever it is exposed. Or it can be deposition of extraneous matter. I don't know whether you have observed or not. If cloth or paper is kept on a metal plate for a very long period, you can see that under the cloth or the paper, the metal undergoes corrosion. And that is also known as differential aeration corrosion. When the metal is exposed to different concentrations of oxygen at one part, and that is similar if you would have seen the water lifting pipes, the pipes fitted to the pumps for lifting waters, metal pipes. Nowadays everywhere you see the polymer pipes, but if you have seen anywhere the metal pipes, galvanized steel pipes, then the part of the pipe below the water, that is generally coated with yellow rust, because below the water it undergoes corrosion, and the exposed part which is above the water, that is free from corrosion. Metal exposed to different concentrations of oxygen, the part which is exposed to lower oxygen concentration undergoes corrosion, because that part acts as anode. Why? Oxygen is one of the reactants for cathodic reaction, as we explained. Oxygen is one of the reactants. When the oxygen concentration is more, cathode reaction can take place easily, or cathode reaction can take place faster. Therefore, wherever there is more oxygen concentration, cathodic reaction can take place faster, and therefore that region acts as cathode. Whereas inside the water, the pipe is exposed only to dissolved oxygen, lower oxygen concentration, and that part acts as anode. And similarly, if something is deposited on a metal, below the deposit, the metal rusts or undergoes corrosion. Or again, the exposure to different oxygen concentrations, stress conditions. Whenever the stress is acting under specific corrosion environment, the metal is susceptible for corrosion. Almost all the alloys and metals, they will suffer stress corrosion when they are exposed to a specific environments. Under stress, tensile stress is acting on them, they will undergo corrosion. Then structural heterogeneity, non-uniformity in the structure or surface, non-uniformity on the surface will also lead to the formation of galvanic cells. Next please. Then the corrosion cases are broadly classified into 8 types. I will not be going into the details, I will be just mentioning them here. Uniform attack, as the term itself indicates, the metal uniformly undergoes corrosion over the entire metal surface. Only possible when the metal surface is uniform and also the corrosion environment is uniform. Then only it can undergo uniform corrosion. Galvanic or two metal corrosion, as I mentioned earlier, when two different metals are in contact with each other. Crevice corrosion, whenever there is a gap between the two metal parts, when there is a crevice between the two metal parts, the metal around the crevice, that will undergo corrosion. Pitting corrosion, as the term itself indicates, it will result in the formation of minute pores or holes or pits, is one of the very dangerous forms of corrosion, because you cannot see the corrosion till the metal fails. If there is a metal structure, you will come to know that the metal has undergone pitting corrosion only when that the structure fails or it falls down, because they will be forming a very micro pores, minute pores, and generally that will be covered with the corrosion product and we can't see it, and this force will be vertically migrating into the structure, making the metal weak, and under load it can collapse at any time. Similarly, the intergranular corrosion, the metals are made up of grains, crystalline grains. At the grain boundaries, the metal can undergo corrosion. It can undergo corrosion. There can be selective leaching or parting. In an alloy, the metal can, okay, I have shown there, for example, that fourth one is a selective leaching. In brass, what is brass? Alloy of copper and zinc. Zinc selectively gets leached from the alloy and finally you will be left with only copper. There can be erosion corrosion, where it is a combined effect of a corrosion environment and an abrading action, impinging action on the metal surface, or it can be stress corrosion in the presence of a tensile stress. Metal may undergo corrosion in the presence of a specific environment. Next. Corrosion control. There are different types of different methods to control the corrosion. The types of corrosion are so different. The environment in which the metals undergo corrosion is so varied. You cannot have a single method which can control the corrosion of all the types. Therefore, depending upon the case, depending upon the requirement, depending upon the metal, depending upon the environment, you have to go for the controlling methods. As I mentioned earlier, it is only control and not prevention. There are different methods. Material selection, you can select the material at the planning stage itself or the selection of the material stage itself. You can select a material which doesn't undergo corrosion in the given environment. Gold, platinum, I mentioned, they do not easily undergo corrosion. But we cannot build a building using the gold reinforcements or platinum reinforcements. Economically, it is not viable, and also they are not available in such a large quantities. Then you have to go for an option which is readily available, but at the same time you have to take measures to see that the metal doesn't undergo corrosion or the alloy doesn't undergo corrosion. Then design, the designing of the metal article. By properly designing it, the corrosion can be minimized. Cathodic protection, metal undergoes at the anode. Therefore, if you make the metal completely cathode, don't allow the metal to act as anode, convert it completely into cathode. Then the metal is not affected at the cathode, therefore your protected metal doesn't get corroded. Or there is anodic protection. When you make it as anode, it is supposed to undergo corrosion, but still for some metals and some alloys, they are said to be metals or alloys with active passive transitions. Under certain conditions, though metal is susceptible for corrosion, they can be made passive by making them anode. Okay, I am not going into the details of those things. Then coatings, that is quite commonly used, mostly used. Metal is either coated with an organic paint, or it can be coated with metals, it can be coated with inorganic metals. You would have heard about phosphating, anodizing, anodized aluminium. Have you come across? No, no idea. When we were students, it was very popular, aluminium tiffin carriers with the variety of colors. They are made up of aluminium, but with the variety of colors, shining green, yellow, orange, red, pink, in any color you want. They were all anodized aluminium particles. But now everywhere you have plastic, we don't use metal for that. That's a different thing. Next please. Okay, my concentration is more on inhibitor. Inhibitor is a substance that when added in small quantity or concentration decreases the corrosion rate. You are adding a very small concentration of the inhibitor into the environment, corrosion environment in itself. But again, it cannot be used universally. You cannot add a small quantity of a inhibitor substance into the environment. Therefore, use of inhibitor has got its own limitation. It can be used only in a closed system. One of the examples is the coolant system in engines, automobile engines, coolant system. What is the function of the coolant? To cool the engine. It is circulated to the engine so that it absorbs heat and cools the engine. What is there in coolant? Any idea? What is used as coolant? It is basically water, 70% water. Then it is mixed with the 30% ethylene glycol. Ethylene glycol. Then of course some colorant is also added, therefore generally you will be seeing it as light green in color or blue in color. Water is a good absorber of heat. But the problem with the water is, at high temperature, water can also cause corrosion of the engine parts. Therefore ethylene glycol is used as the inhibitor. That prevents the corrosion of the coolant system when the water is circulated. Therefore inhibitor, as the term itself indicates, inhibits corrosion, reduces the rate of the corrosion, and that can act, or it is therefore it is known as a retarding catalyst. Generally, how do you define a catalyst? Which alters the corrosion, alters the rate of the reaction, alters the rate of the corrosion. But earlier we were defining it as catalyst, the one which increases the rate of the reaction. Okay, later it was changed. It is altering because it can retard the reaction also, corrosion reaction rate also. Therefore, inhibitors are retarding catalysts. They act as deterrents or retardants. Deterrents, they try to prevent the corrosion reaction from taking place. Then it is known as a deterrent. Prevents the reaction from taking place. Retardants, if you cannot stop the reaction, then the attempt is to reduce the rate of reaction. Then it is known as retardant. Then again, depending upon the action, as I mentioned earlier, there cannot be a corrosion reaction without both anodic and cathodic reactions. If you can reduce the rate of both the reactions, well and good, corrosion reaction will be retarded. If you reduce the rate of the anodic reaction, automatically the rate of the cathodic reaction also will be reduced. Or if you reduce the rate of the cathodic reaction, rate of the anodic reaction will also be reduced, because whatever the electrons liberated at the anode should be consumed at the cathode. If the electrons should be consumed at the cathode, electrons should be liberated at the anode. Therefore they are interdependent. If one slows down, automatically both the reactions slow down and overall the corrosion reaction slows down. Therefore inhibitor can be an anodic inhibitor or a cathodic inhibitor. If it reduces the anodic rate, reaction rate, it is anodic inhibitor. If it reduces the cathodic reaction rate, it is cathodic inhibitor. Next slide please. Anodic inhibitors, the commonly used inhibitors are chromates, tungstates, molybdates, phosphates. The mechanism of their action is, at the anode, metal is converted into metal ion during corrosion. These metal ions will combine with these metal anions like chromates, tungstates, molybdates, form their respective salts. For example, if it is iron, they will form iron chromate, iron tungstate, iron molybdate, and these salts will deposit on the metal surface, forming a protective film. It will be forming a continuous film on the metal surface, acting as a barrier between the underlying metal surface and the corrosion environment, or they prevent the corrosion environment coming in contact with the underlying metal surface and thereby reduce the anodic reaction. Next slide, please. Cathodic reaction again depends upon the type of reaction taking place, whether it is liberation of hydrogen or consumption of or absorption of oxygen. Liberation of hydrogen can be prevented either by preventing or retarding H plus ions to the electrode surface. When can be hydrogen liberated? H plus ions will take up electrons from the cathode surface. H plus ion should come in contact with the cathode metal surface. Then there can be exchange of electrons. H plus ion will take up an electron from the metal electrode. It will form hydrogen atom. Hydrogen atoms will combine to form hydrogen molecule. Then hydrogen gas gets liberated. If you prevent the H plus ions from coming in contact with the metal surface, then there cannot be liberation of hydrogen. How can it be done? By the addition of certain organic compounds like thioureas, amines, mercaptans, heterocyclic compounds. And these organic compounds, they get deposited or they form a film on the cathode metal surface. They form a film on the metal surface, cathodic region of the metal surface, again forming as a barrier film between the underlying metal surface and the corrosion environment, thereby preventing H plus ions from coming in contact with the cathode surface and thereby preventing the liberation of hydrogen. Or certain agents can increase the hydrogen over voltage. What is hydrogen over voltage? You would have studied in electrochemistry. Extra potential that need to be applied in order to have continuous liberation of hydrogen. When the electrolysis takes place, if hydrogen gets liberated, extra potential that need to be applied, because hydrogen over voltage comes into picture, or any over voltage comes into picture when the electrode processes are polarized. What do you mean by polarization? Opposition, hindrance or resistance for the reaction. When there is opposition, you need to spend more energy, you need to spend extra energy. Therefore, hydrogen over voltage is the extra potential you need to apply in order to have the liberation of hydrogen. Higher the hydrogen over voltage, higher extra energy you need to apply, more difficult is the liberation of hydrogen. Therefore, on any metal surface, if the hydrogen over voltage is high, liberation of hydrogen doesn't take place easily. Therefore, if you add compounds like oxides of arsenic, antimony, etc., these compounds will deposit on the metal surface or the cathodic surface as arsenic or antimony. And when the antimony or arsenic is deposited, now the cathode surface is not your metal, it is antimony or arsenic, and over which the hydrogen over voltage is very high. Hydrogen doesn't get liberated easily, and therefore liberation of hydrogen can be reduced, or the rate of liberation of hydrogen can be retarded or slowed down. Next please. Inhibition of oxygen absorption, either by removing the oxygen from the medium or by decreasing the rate of diffusion of oxygen to the electrode surface. Invariably, any medium if you take, oxygen will be there, dissolved oxygen at least if it is a solution. If you remove the oxygen from the medium itself by adding certain reducing agents, or they are also known as oxygen scavengers, like a hydrazine or sodium sulfite. Hydrazine is a good reducing agent that can react with oxygen, forming the nitrogen and water. Sodium sulfite can react with oxygen forming sodium sulfate. Therefore, free oxygen will not be available in the medium. Therefore, there cannot be liberation of oxygen. Or you can prevent the oxygen from coming in contact with the cathode surface, as we discussed for H plus ion. Oxygen can be reduced only when oxygen comes in contact with the cathode surface. You can prevent oxygen from coming in contact with the metal surface by adding the salts like zinc sulfate, magnesium sulfate, nickel sulfate, etc., because these salts will form their respective hydroxides. When the solution is not highly acidic, if it is neutral or alkaline or near neutral, they will hydrolyze. They will form their hydroxide, zinc hydroxide, magnesium hydroxide, nickel hydroxides, and these hydroxides will deposit on the cathodic surface. They will once again form a barrier film or a protective film on the cathode surface, preventing oxygen from coming in contact with the metal surface. Next, please. Okay, that was depending upon their action, whether it acts on at the cathode or the anode. A more comprehensive classification is given like this. They can be classified into interfacial inhibitors and environmental modifiers. Again, that interfacial modifiers inhibitors can be further classified into vapor phase inhibitors, liquid phase inhibitors. Liquid phase inhibitors are further classified into cathodic, anodic, mixed type. Cathodic inhibitors are further classified into precipitators and poisons, and mixed type inhibitors are classified into physisorption inhibitors, chemisorption inhibitors, and film forming inhibitors. Next slide, please. Briefly, I will be going through this. Total. Environment modifiers bring down the aggressiveness of the environment. You are modifying the environment itself so that the metal is not easily attacked by the environment. As I mentioned earlier, your hydrazine or sodium sulfate can remove the oxygen and thereby prevent the corrosion. That modifies the environment. Next slide, please. Interfacial inhibitors, also referred as adsorption type inhibitors, they bring about corrosion inhibition by adsorbing along the metal electrolyte interface. That's what I mentioned earlier, preventing the reactants from coming in contact with the metal. At the interface between the solution and the metal, they go and get adsorbed, form a film, and prevent the reactants of the corrosion reaction or the cathodic reaction coming in contact with the metal. They are further classified into vapor phase inhibitors and liquid phase inhibitors. Next, please. Vapor phase inhibitors, as the term itself indicates, they are volatile compounds with the low vapor pressures, where the vapors exhibit corrosion inhibiting properties. And this type of inhibitors are particularly important when the metal components are stored and transported. How the metal structures or components are transported? They are packed in a proper package, either cardboard boxes or plastic boxes, and during the transportation it takes long duration, and during that time, to prevent them from corrosion, vapor phase inhibitors are added, because within the box these vapor phase inhibitors are added. Because of their lower vapor pressure, they are volatile, they vaporize and they spread over the entire box and prevent the metal article from undergoing corrosion. Next, please. Liquid phase inhibitors, they are directly added into the corrosion medium, where they interact with the surface in a dissolved form. Based on again which acyl reaction is affected by the liquid phase inhibitors, they can be anodic inhibitors or cathodic inhibitors. Next, please. Okay, this I have already explained. Okay, then they can be mixed type inhibitors also. It can affect both, the same inhibitor can affect both anodic reaction and cathodic reaction. It is not only affecting one of the reactions, it affects both the reactions. Then there are classes of compounds which slow down both the anodic, there's a mistake there, not anodic, anodic and cathodic reactions of the corrosion to different extent. And the majority of the organic molecules, they display this feature. And the production rendered by the mixed type inhibitors could possibly the outcome of one or more of the following phenomena: physical adsorption, chemical adsorption, and film formation. Next please. Mixed type inhibition. Inhibitors again, physical adsorption. In physical chemistry you would have studied about physisorption. It is due to weak physical forces of interaction between the adsorbent and the adsorbate. What are the weak physical interactions? There can be electrostatic forces of attraction. There can be dipole-dipole interactions, dipole-induced dipole interactions, weak forces of interaction between the adsorbent and the adsorbate. Therefore, when these inhibitor molecules are added into the medium, they interact with the metal surface and get adsorbed on the metal surface, acting again as a barrier between the corrosion medium and the metal surface. It can be a chemical adsorption. Chemical adsorption is relatively a stronger adsorption. Stronger bonds are involved between the adsorbate and the adsorbent, and that generally possible when there is a sharing of electrons or a transfer of electrons. Generally observed when the transition metals with incompletely filled or empty d orbitals, and the inhibitor molecules are electron rich molecules, or they can donate a pair of electrons. There can be a sort of a coordination bonding possible between the metal and the inhibitors, thereby they are getting adsorbed on the metal surface. Then there can be film formation. It is neither physisorption nor chemisorption, or it can be both, or it can be just a precipitation. The inhibitor may react with the metal ion or some other species present in the environment, and the product may get deposited on the entire metal surface, forming a thin film over the metal surface, and again that film acting as a barrier between the underlying metal surface and the corrosion medium. Okay, the mechanism again can be of different types. Interfacial inhibition by adsorption, blocking of active reaction sites, formation of barrier film, participation in electrode reactions. Next please. Interfacial inhibition. The adsorption of the inhibitor molecules on the metal surface in general is considered as a substitution process, because metal surface is already adsorbed with the water molecules. When it is in a aqueous medium, the metal surface is adsorbed with the water molecules. When you add the inhibitor is in the solvated form or hydrated form, and these hydrated inhibitors will displace the adsorbed water molecules, and they themselves will get adsorbed on the metal surface. And adsorbed inhibitors potentially cover the active reaction sites on the metal surface, wherever the metal is supposed to undergo oxidation or anodic reaction, or the regions where the corrosion react, or it should be a cathodic reaction. The adsorbed inhibitor will preferentially get adsorbed over that active sites, thereby they block that active sites. That's what I mentioned earlier as a barrier film, preventing the active sites from coming in contact with the medium, and therefore the rate of the corrosion decreases. Next please. Again, this is a barrier film that is continuously, it may form a film on the metal surface and thereby prevent the corrosion. Participation in electrode reaction, and this type of inhibition is also possible. When you studied about the polarization, have you studied polarization, concentration polarization, activation polarization, charge transfer polarization, diffusion polarization, adsorption polarization? That accounts for the number of steps involved when either a metal undergoes oxidation at the anode, or a metal ion gets deposited as a metal atom on the electrode surface. Or whatever the electrode, anodic reaction or the cathodic reaction, though it appears to be a simple one-step process. Metal losing electron and getting converted into a positive ion, or some other ions taking up electrons and getting deposited as a neutral species. Appears to be a simple reaction, one-step reaction, but actually the processes taking place at the electrode surface is a multi-step reaction, not one-step process reaction. And whenever there is a multi-step reaction, you would have studied in your kinetics, the slowest step is the rate determining step. Therefore, different types of polarization is possible on the electrode surface. Electrode reaction involves a number of steps, and inhibitor may get included in one of the steps. It may participate in one of the steps and thereby reducing the rate of that particular step. If one of the multi-step reaction is, one step of the multi-step reaction is slowed down, the overall reaction slows down. That is what meant by the inhibitor participating in the electrode reaction itself. That doesn't mean that it is participating entirely. One of the steps, it may participate, it will try to slow down that step, thereby reducing the overall rate of the reaction. Next please. Okay, that is in general about the, very briefly I will try to touch upon the different aspects of inhibitors. Do I have time? Some more time? What is the time? 5 minutes. Okay, okay, that will be sufficient I think. And these are some of the alloy systems we are studying in our lab as a part of our research program. And some of the alloy systems what we study are, okay, we are not studying on iron system, pure iron or steel system. We study aluminium alloys and their composites. Then of course one type of a steel, maraging steel, and then also magnesium zinc alloy and magnesium aluminum alloys. And they also have a lot of applications because most of these alloys are, except maraging steel, others are lightweight alloys. Wherever you need to have the strength to weight ratio is very high. For a given weight, if you require a very high strength, then one of the options is you go for a material which is light in weight, but it possesses all other required mechanical properties. And in that respect, aluminum alloys and magnesium alloys are widely used. But one of the disadvantages with the magnesium alloy is, you know that magnesium is a highly reactive metal. Its electrode potential is the standard electrode potential is minus 2.32 volt, very low electrode potential value. Therefore, it is highly reactive metal. Therefore, these magnesium alloys are also highly susceptible for corrosion. And that limits their application in most of the users. And therefore, we are trying to study their corrosion behavior and then whether they can be used in the common applications where aqueous medium comes in contact with these alloys. Next please. And we are studying certain classes of inhibitors like thiosemic carbazides, thiosemic carbozones, triazole derivatives, because you know that all these compounds, they have nitrogen atoms, sulfur atoms, oxygen atoms, and they are all electron rich moieties with the lone pairs of electrons, and therefore there will be good adsorbents on the metal surfaces. But they are generally used for aluminium and steel, because aluminium and steel, you know that they have a good complexing properties. Transition metals are characterized with their tendency to form complexes, and though not to the extent of transition metals, aluminium also forms stable complexes with many of the ligands. Therefore, for them, these types of ligands are quite suitable because they can easily adsorb on the alloy surfaces through either physis option or chemis option. But when we go for magnesium alloys, you know that magnesium alkaline earth metal, relatively it has got very little tendency to form the complexes. You would have said that forms the complex only with a very strong ligand like, or a chelating ligand like EDTA, or certain ligands like crown ethers. Otherwise, they do not usually form stronger complexes with the normal ligands. And therefore, in such cases, we are going for the surfactants and ionic liquids. And another reason why we are concentrating on the surfactants and ionic ligands is the green ligands, because organic ligands are generally toxic in nature. Therefore, now with the awareness and regulations about the environmental pollution and also the toxicity of the compounds what we are using, the trend is to go for non-toxic and environmental friendly compounds. And therefore, we are also trying from our side whether we can use some of the environmental friendly ligands, environmentally friendly inhibitors like the surfactants and ionic liquids. And these surfactants, what are they? They are carboxylates with the long alkyl or alkene chains, okay, stearates, malyates, and so on. Therefore, they anionic surfactants we are using because anions can combine with the magnesium ion, forming magnesium carboxylate. Magnesium carboxylate being insoluble, that gets deposited on the metal surface, again forming a barrier film or a surface film, thereby reducing the corrosion of the alloys. And ionic liquids, what are ionic liquids? That is again a green solvent with very low vapor pressure. Have you come across ionic liquids? Yes, okay. They can also be used as the inhibitors. Sort of a new field it is. Earlier it was not being used. Now a lot of research is going on these ionic liquids also. And one of the other trend is to use natural products. If you look into the literature, you can find a large number of references with the use of natural extracts, plant extracts. But again, it has got its own limitation, like stability, and also assigning or understanding the mechanism of inhibition is difficult, because a natural extract will have a large number of compounds. It's a mixture of compounds, not a single compound. Then which is effective, which is not, and all those issues come, and that is the limitation. Next please. Yes. Okay, I think I wanted to tell that why magnesium alloys, how it is used. One of the system I have taken as the example. I think that can be skipped. Go to next. Where all they are used. Okay, this also I think I am told that some of you are doing the experiment also in your lab on a TAPL method, potentiodynamic polarization method. You determine the corrosion current, TAPL slopes. Yes. Okay. That is just the experimental arrangements what we do. Next. Okay, that is I just try to give some procedures. Next. Okay, this is the typical TAPL plot or a potentiodynamic polarization curves for the corrosion of one of our samples, so that is Zd41 magnesium alloys. Okay, in the presence of different concentration of inhibitors. And those who have carried out the experiment under of this potentiodynamic polarization measurements, by looking at the plots, you can make out that as the concentration of the inhibitor increases, the plots are shifted towards lower current density regions, indicating that the corrosion rate decreases with the increase in inhibitor concentration. Next please. Okay, these are some of the values that can be skipped. I thought if there is a sufficient time I could have shown all these things. And then another method what we are using is electrochemical impedance spectroscopic studies. Did you study the theory of it? No, they are not. You are not used also. Okay, this is another method, and the advantage of this method is you can get information about the mechanism of the inhibition, how exactly the inhibitor molecules are adsorbed on the metal surface, how exactly they try to decrease the rate of corrosion, and all those things. That is possible with the impedance is nothing but the counterpart of resistance for DC current. You have E is equal to IR for direct current, but if you use alternate current, AC current, then instead of resistance we use the term impedance. Therefore, if you look into that curves, the diameter of the curve represents the impedance, magnitude of the impedance or the resistance for current. More the impedance, more the resistance, less is the current, therefore less is the corrosion rate. Therefore, if the diameter goes on increasing, that implies that the impedance for the current increases or the resistance for the current increases. Therefore, the corrosion current decreases and the corrosion rate decreases. Next please. Okay. From that you can get a number of parameters based on which we can evaluate the corrosion rate and inhibition efficiency. And you may be aware that how inhibition efficiency is calculated. Corrosion rate in the absence of inhibitor minus corrosion rate in the presence of inhibitor divided by corrosion rate in the absence of inhibitor into 100. Okay, right. Next please. Okay, I think I will skip this. I try to explain mechanism of one of the carboxylate. Please skip it. Next please. Next. Okay. Before I conclude, okay, this is about corrosion. Okay, you can read yourself. And finally, thank you for your patience listening, that too in the afternoon, and that also after listening to one of the lectures. Is the second lecture. Still you have maintained your attentiveness. I could make out you are okay. So most of you are at least trying to respond with your expressions. Otherwise, it becomes sometimes. I tell my students also, if you don't respond after 20 minutes to 25 minutes, I also get bored to lecture further. Okay. Thank you very much for your again patient hearing, and also thanks to the department. Okay, I consider it as my department only, because I passed out from this department as the second batch student. Then it was, department was not so big, and Professor Vishalakshi knows it, with very little facilities, with the limited number of faculty members and the limited lab facilities. We completed our course, but now when I look back, it appears to me that it was for our advantage. When every facility is there, most of the times you mechanically do your work here, even your labs. Everything is available. You have to go there, stand in front of your instrument, and procedure is there, follow it and do it. It was not in our case. Not the case in when we were the students. We had to struggle for everything. We had to do ourselves. No lab staff, no proper guidance. Because of that, we learned a lot of things at that time. That probably helped us later also. Okay, I am not advocating that there should not be facilities in the departments, but still there are advantages of not having also. Okay, the same is true with when you do the research also. Okay, when the facilities are available, anybody can do research. When enough facilities are not there, then yes, of course it becomes a struggle. And finally, when you do something, you get elated and excited, because with all these difficulties I could do it. Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Minutes. Anyhow, I thank Professor for his inspiring basics of corrosion and its applications. I think our students will contribute towards the corrosion inhibition area. They can contribute their research. Okay. As a token of appreciation and gratitude, I would like to present a small memento to Professor on the behalf of KSTA and as well as Mangalore University Chemistry Department.